The Punisher is the latest Marvel series on Netflix. I was very excited for this show because The Punisher was one of my favourite parts of Daredevil Season 2, and the basic storyline, without giving too much away, is that Frank Castle is continuing to find the men responsible for the death of his family. I'm happy to tell you guys that The Punisher is yet another solid addition to the Marvel Netflix library. The biggest thing that drove this show for me was the character of The Punisher, Frank Castle himself. Frank Castle is one of the more compelling protagonists of any superhero film or TV show that I've seen in quite a while, because he's not a superhero. He has no powers. He's just a normal guy who is traumatized, and he is always haunted by the visions of his family being killed, and his family was taken away from him, and he just wants to get some good old-fashioned revenge on the douchebags responsible. So you connect to him on a human aspect, and you can't really do that with most superheroes nowadays because Frank Castle is just a guy. So you really do care about Frank Castle, and you really get behind his quest for revenge, and Jon Bernthal is incredible. The only other Punisher thing I've ever seen was that film with John Travolta. Didn't really care for that film at all, so I can't say that Jon Bernthal is the definitive Punisher because I've not seen all the other portrayals, but he did an incredible job playing this character for this show. He just brings everything to the table and you care about him so much, and that's the thing that completely drove the Punisher for me. That, as well as the intriguing conspiracy that this show presents, because it's about Frank Castle going after the men responsible, who are some people in higher places, and it's to do with something that happened back when he was in the war, and I found myself getting really into the intrigue of this conspiracy story. And that's the thing with The Punisher, it's a very slow building conspiracy thriller that takes its time setting up its conflicts and its characters. I'm saying this because if you saw Daredevil Season 2 and you saw all that badassery with The Punisher killing lots of guys, and you go into The Punisher expecting to see that like every episode, you're going to be a little bit disappointed. But if you can appreciate the pacing and the tone and the good conspiracy story, you'll like The Punisher like I did. That's not to say that there aren't some scenes of The Punisher going into a place and just killing lots of guys, because there are quite a few of those scenes and they are extremely gratifying. Yeah, there's a lot of blood in this show. As much as I enjoyed watching The Punisher, there was one big question mark hovering over this show throughout most of it, and that was the storyline revolving around this character called Lewis, who's this former Marine who's come back and he's really traumatized. He's struggling to adjust to modern life after he's been in the war. Now, I understand what this storyline could be saying in terms of veterans and their place in the world after the war, and what their states of minds are, and PTSD and all that cool stuff. I understand that, and in that aspect it does do some stuff well in terms of contributing to those themes. There are some emotional moments with this character, but in terms of the actual show itself, I just don't think it needed to be there, because it has nothing to do with Frank Castle and his storyline. So you have Frank Castle going on his quest for revenge, and then it cuts back to this Lewis character dealing with his PTSD, and I was nowhere near as invested in that storyline that I was with Frank Castle's storyline. Then we get to episodes 9 and 10. Now this is kind of a mild spoiler, I'm not going to ruin any plot points or anything like that, but this Lewis character storyline comes to a conclusion in episodes 9 and 10, and Frank Castle gets involved in the conclusion of this storyline, and to me it kind of felt forced. It was like the writers were like, okay, we need this Lewis character storyline to have some kind of meaningful conclusion, make it feel like it belongs in the show, so we'll just get Frank Castle, take him out of his storyline and put him in this storyline, and have him conclude it with the Lewis character. At this point I was really invested in Frank Castle's storyline, going after the people responsible for the death of his family and the conspiracy thriller aspect, but then it gets put in the background and Frank Castle there has to deal with this Lewis character, and it just felt a little bit forced to me how they concluded that Lewis character's subplot. That being said though, episodes 10 through 13 were very, very satisfying. There are some scenes in here where my jaw was actually kind of dropped at just the amount of blood. There's, like I said, there's a lot of blood, and it's very, very satisfying to watch. Overall, I really liked The Punisher Season 1. That one subplot with the Lewis character did have me questioning it throughout the show, and its conclusion did feel a bit forced, like I said, and the first few episodes took a little bit to get going. It took a little while for me to actually get into the groove of the show and understand what the storyline was and where we were going with it. By episode 5, I got a better understanding of where the show was going and what we were dealing with, so from episode 5 onwards, I was almost consistently engaged, intrigued, and involved with The Punisher. Frank Castle is one of the most compelling comic book protagonists I've seen in some time, and he, along with Jon Bernthal's amazing performance, drive this show to its success for me. Top all that off with a bunch of amazing scenes of The Punisher going in and killing a bunch of people people, and you've got a good show in my book. Plus, it's not just those scenes that make the Punisher great. There's also scenes, like smaller character scenes, where like these soldiers are talking about trauma and their times in the war and how it's affected them as people and them adjusting to modern life. It's not just the Lewis character, there's some other characters in there that share their experiences and their thoughts as well. And these smaller scenes really do bring out the best in their respective actors, and they were some of the most emotional parts of the show for me. Like I said, the Punisher is another solid addition to the Marvel Netflix library. I can't wait to see this character back again. I'm going to give the Punisher season 1 a 4 out of 5. So have you watched the Punisher season 1? What did you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comments below, and if you want to see more of my stuff, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video.